argument that's made against term limits is that we might lose some good people. I'm willing to take a shot. I mean, all right, that's okay. Because you know what? We'll lose a lot of bad people.
Good people to come along.
But also, you know what? I don't think there are good people that are career politicians. I think to be a good leader in Washington, you need to be in the private sector. Chris Dodd has been in the Senate for 30 years. He was in the Congress for 6 years. Before that, he was in law school and he was in the Army. So he's never actually worked in the private sector. He doesn't even know what it's like to comply with the rules and regulations he writes. So I think people need to know that A, they should be in the private sector before they go to government, and then realize that they have to go back to it and live with the rules they write and pay the taxes that they impose. And I think that way, if we had a citizen legislature, it would be better. Not these career politicians whose only agenda is to maintain that career. And all they care about is getting reelected, and that's why we get these crazy economic policies of short-term pain for long-term, short-term gain for long-term pain, because they don't care. All they care about is an election coming up and how can I win, and I don't care what I do to the country in the process. And if we can just get that attitude to stop, right, if they're not always thinking about the next election, then maybe they'll think about the country for a change.
What do you think of the Tea Party movement?
They're good. I wish they were as strong as the original Tea Parties, but it's difficult to, just not pay taxes now. But, yeah, think about what the original Tea Party guys were upset about. It was like, what, a couple of penny tax back then? God, I wish we had the British, Yeah. And the British, look at the British did a much better job with Hong Kong. We have imposed taxes on ourselves that the Founding Fathers never in a million years, would they have tolerated it. What King George did was nothing compared to what Washington, what we're doing to ourselves. But yeah, I think the Tea Party shows that people are pissed off. And they know that what's happening is wrong. Right? They know that these huge, big government bailouts have got to be wrong. That capitalism doesn't work if we bail out all the people that failed. Right? It's reverse Darwinism. The worse you do, the more money you get from the government. And the people who are doing it right, they're the ones that get punished and have to pay the taxes. So it's not going to work. Right? That kind of evolution is not going to work. And people understand that that's wrong. They see these trillion-dollar deficits. They know that can't be right. Right? They see the value. How can our politicians are telling us that it's okay that the dollar is going down because it's going down in an orderly manner? So we're going broke, but we shouldn't worry because it's happening in an orderly manner. I don't want to grow broke. I don't want to watch my money go down the drain. Right? I want a strong dollar. Right? That means we're a strong country. But how do we get a strong dollar? Not by talking about it. We get a strong dollar by being productive. And how do we get to be productive? We save our money so we can finance capital investment. And we make stuff. That's how we become a rich country. You don't become a rich country by buying stuff from China and borrowing money from Japan to pay for it and going into debt. That's not how you become rich. But the Tea Party, I think these guys have got it right. We need more people out there. We need more protests so we can wake the country up and realize that, this is really could be a revolution. We got to stop this before it's too late.
Over a year ago, Senator Schumer of New York leaked policy information that caused the run on IndyMac Bank. This was one of the things that accelerated the bubble burst. Why is it nobody will speak about that and bring that out? Here's a senator of the United States that committed a felony.
Well, the bubbles burst no matter what. It's a question of which pin they find first. So it wasn't that whatever he leaked is what caused it. It was going to happen. It was a bubble in search of a pin.
Yeah, but he still broke the law. He's
well,
still a senator. He broke the law.
What did he do specifically?
He leaked confidential information that caused the run on that bank.
He's right.
Yeah, well, obviously he shouldn't have done that, but that's not why the banks failed, because they made bad loans. Why did they make bad loans? Because of cheap money and guaranteed mortgages by the government. The government funded it all. If you think about the whole teaser rates, what made the whole subprime market function was the teaser rate. The teaser rate was buy a house that you can't afford, because for the first few years you're going to get an artificially low rate. Well, where did teaser rates came from? They came from Alan Greenspan. Without that 1% interest rate, and Freddie and Fannie, and I saw this interview on television, the CEO of Fannie Mae, when after the horses were gone and he tried to close the barn door, he said Fannie Mae is now going to only insure loans where we think that people can pay the money back. And what he said was, in the past, Fannie Mae was guaranteeing, with taxpayer money, guaranteeing adjustable rate mortgages, where the only thing the borrower can afford was the initial teaser rate. But where Fannie and Freddie knew, going in, that the minute those mortgages reset, that the guys couldn't afford. And when the interviewer asked him, well, then why did you do that? Why didn't you just, because they said, from now on, we're going to make sure they can afford the whole mortgage, not just the teaser rate. And they said, well, why did you do that? And the head of Fannie Mae, who had just resigned, said, well, everybody was making money buying real estate, and we didn't want to tell them that they couldn't do it. So in other words, Fannie Mae says, because everyone was gambling on real estate, we wanted to make sure that the gambling kept going on. We didn't want to stop it by telling people they couldn't buy houses they couldn't afford. So this is what the government did. So I knew, when I was writing my book, I knew that all these banks were holding home equity loans, right, on homes that I knew were worthless. I mean, I knew, because I saw houses in California, houses that were $200,000, all of a sudden they're $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, and they've got $700,000 mortgages on them. How can that be? The creditors, you knew the creditors were going to get killed. I read this article about this woman whose house was foreclosed on, and she owed about $500,000 on a house. But she originally bought the house for less than $100,000. How is she $500,000 in debt? But she had 2 new cars, she would take a vacation. She'd been borrowing money for years and spending it, and the creditors were left holding the bag. So I knew this was going to be a massive disaster when the banking system realized that these mortgages are no good. But, we can't try to pretend that this didn't happen. We can't try to artificially levitate home prices just because we don't want to acknowledge that that was a mistake, because real estate prices are still too high. People can't afford to buy homes. That's why governments have to give you tax credits for a 3% down payment. That's why we have to have artificially low interest rates, because no one can afford an actual market rate. But you can't do that. What are the consequences of having 0% interest rates? Nobody's going to save any money because there's no return. Well, how can we have an economy where no one saves any money? There's no capital. There's no jobs. There's no investment. There's nothing. All the money is fleeing the country. We're chasing the capital out of the country because there's no return here. And so we're just going to keep sinking deeper and deeper into the abyss until somebody does something about it.
Thank you, Peter.